from The Athletic, your friend and ours, the great Matt Barrows. Matt, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing well. Again, I don't know what the takeaways are from yesterday. I was impressed that the Rams kind of went for two late. That's cool. There's no need for that game to go overtime or a tie. But any takeaways from there? The fact that maybe Moody missed a kick and an extra point. Anything we take from that gives you any concern going into the game in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that is a concern, and we really don't know what Cleveland Farrell's injury is. I talked to him after the game, and he was walking around without a limp, and he was optimistic that he'd be able to play. But players are always optimistic about that, so they're waiting for the details of what that injury is, and when we get that, we'll know the prognosis. And he's been a 17-game starter for this team. He's the guy that they like to have on base downs. His sack numbers haven't popped out. I think he has 3.5 on the season. But he's been part of that mix. He's been part of that defensive front. So if he were out for the next game, which is either on January 20 or 21, I would imagine it's Chase Young, getting sort of a more meaty role in this defense, which wouldn't be a bad thing. I mean, I think he's probably the second most talented defensive end on the team. And, the more he plays, the more he gets kind of accustomed to the way they do things here. So, nothing catastrophic, even if it were say a 3 or 4 week injury for Cleveland Farrell. But, you would have wanted to come out of that game with 0 injuries.
Talking with Matt Barrows here. Matt, we know the Niners can play one of 4 teams, I guess, in 2 weeks. Buccaneers, the Eagles, the Packers, or this Rams team again. So I know they sat some players too yesterday, and there's division knowledge. And for the large part of things, I mean, the Niners really have kind of owned the Rams. But if that was a matchup we were to see in a couple of weeks at Levi's again, how confident would you be in the 49ers?
Oh, I'd be confident in the 49ers no matter who shows up here. I would think, though, that the Rams are the team that the 49ers least want to play because of what you just said. I mean, it's not just division familiarity. They run the same system. I mean, so, the fact that, when the 49ers play some of these teams, they're not used to a zone blocking defense. They're not used to all the motions that the 49ers do. The Rams are. I mean, they run that system. And the Rams, you got to give that front office credit. They drafted some really good players this year. And a lot of them were playing late into the game. Puka Nacua, of course, got the record. You saw Byron Young, the defensive end. He played from start to finish. With one other guy, I was sort of impressed by. Kyron Williams, the running back, he didn't play at all, but he had a really good year. So, I mean, these were guys that were very much rookies when the 49ers played the Rams in week 2, and now at the end of the season in week 18, they're veterans now. So, if they came back to Levi's, that would be rookies with a lot of seasoning, shall we say, talented rookies with a lot of experience. So I would think that actually out of all those teams, I mean, maybe it's the Cowboys, maybe it's the Rams, but I would put the Cowboys and Rams 1-2 in teams that the 49ers would probably rather not play in the playoffs.
Yesterday, it made sense why the 49ers didn't play CMC, and we knew that early on, and we knew Purdy was going to be out. How did they decide about Kittle when you could have debated Ayuk or Debo. Those guys played a little bit, but how did they decide on resting Kittle?
I think anybody with even a shadow of an injury didn't play yesterday. I mean, John Feliciano had a back issue during the week, and he practiced. He was questionable for this game. I think in a normal game, certainly a playoff game, Feliciano would have played. George Kittle would have played. Drake Greenlaw would have played. These are all guys that had very minor things. And so, with nothing on the line, the 49ers decided, rather than risk this getting worse and bleeding, not just into the January, let's say the game's on January 20, that game. But also, I mean, Kyle Shanahan wants to practice hard this week. He wants to have two really sort of intense practices, and he wants to do the same next week. And I think that was more important to him than this game. So if there was anything that even remotely compromised one of these practices, certainly the first playoff game, the guy didn't play. A lot of guys in their 30s, that seemed to be a trait of the guys who either didn't play at all or played exactly one series. There was only a handful of 30-somethings. Logan Ryan, one of their very few healthy safeties, he was the exception of a 30-something guy that played a full game on Sunday.
Talking with Matt Barrows here from The Athletic on Niners at 9, brought to you by Stockton Honda, Northern California's #1 Honda dealer. So on the CMC, he left the game, a week ago, kind of precautionary there, but he should be 100% good to go, right, in 2 weeks?
Yeah, and in fact, he said, if this were a more meaningful game, he would have been able to play. I talked to him very briefly coming out of the locker room yesterday. He said he's fine. So I think he's going to practice this week. He might be limited or something like that. But next week, when they're really gearing up for whoever their divisional opponent is, he's going to be full go.
How about, the one thing we kind of led into, of yesterday, one missed PAT, one missed field goal by Moody. By and large, I think, Matt, he had a pretty good year. But when you get now, it's like the postseason, you just can't afford to have any misses. And that's where Robbie Gould was really good in his tenure with the 49ers. So what are they thinking about Moody? Like I said, by and large, I think had a good year. But as far as certainty with him come postseason time.
Yeah, I mean, he made 84% of his field goals. And if you had said that at the beginning of the season, you would have said, "Oh, a rookie making 84% of his field goals, that's fantastic." They picked the right guy. He just didn't want it to happen in week 18. Plus the extra point, which and the extra point was a more significant miss. I mean, it was a bigger miss, and it's the first time he'd done it all season. So it's concerning. I mean, and he's had little kind of spates back in the preseason. He got into a little bit of a rut, and to his credit, climbed out of it. And then at midseason, especially that game in Cleveland, he was in a similar rut, and he climbed out of it. So you just don't want him to be in one of those ruts now. Lots of time to get out of it, lots of time to practice. Those guys will go into Levi Stadium and, practice, with that wind. It changes as the year goes on. It seemed like it was more of a crosswind yesterday than it usually is. The stadium is a north and south stadium, just like every other stadium in the NFL is. And that north side is basically against the San Francisco Bay. So usually that wind is sort of coming in off of the bay. So it's coming in from the northwest. Yeah, yesterday it was more of a west wind. So I don't know if that threw him off. I know that the Rams kicker also missed an extra point on the other end. So, it's trickier than you would think in otherwise very mild, South Bay area of San Francisco. So he will have the opportunity to kind of, work inside that stadium and learn the winds and get all that down before they play their first playoff game.
Yeah, they got to wait a couple weeks for that. As we said, they could play the Rams again. They could get a look at the Packers, the Buccaneers, or maybe the Eagles, who are rapidly falling apart. And Matt, I'm thinking, is the fall of the Eagles coinciding with the Greenlaw Dom incident, or when they broke the partition trying to get to you in the press box?
I mean, it's all the same thing. It was just bad voodoo for the Eagles that day, for sure. But I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, the 49ers really sort of marked the fall of the Eagles." It seemed like they were starting to fall before that. Remember, they had a couple of really tight games that they were able to pull out. But it's obvious that the Eagles are struggling right now, and when you go deep into the postseason like they did the year before, that can happen. I mean, look at what happened to the 49ers, and in 2020 after they lost the Super Bowl. I mean, that was a season marked by injuries, and they were really a shell of themselves, and they didn't pick up again really until sort of mid-season of 2021. So, this has happened before, but I would put the Eagles, the Packers, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, you asked about the teams that the 49ers might least want to play. I'd put that trio. Any one of those three would probably be the optimal team to play in the first round.
All right, and then last thing for you, as this time of year, we've seen some firings already in the coaching world. There'll be more probably, and then people need to be hired. The Niners have been on a run of, kind of grooming future head coaches. Congratulations to DeMeco Ryans and what the Texans did. Is Steve Wilks or anyone else from that staff going to be someone that we should be keeping our eye on of people being pursued?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Texans template, you've got 49ers OC, a former 49ers DC defensive coordinator paired with a high-level person in Shanahan's staff. I mean, that seems to be a good duo that other teams could look at. If Steve Wilks came with one of Shanahan's lieutenants, one of the Kubiaks, one guy that doesn't get a lot of attention is Brian Fleury. He's the tight ends coach, but he does a lot of the game planning. I mean, he knows this offense as well as anyone. Trying to replicate that DeMeco Ryans, Bobby Slowick duo that they did in Houston might be something that some of these teams are interested in. I put in a request today to see if anybody's requested interviews with any of the 49ers yet. It wouldn't surprise me if the answer is yes, but it's so fresh that we don't know the answer yet. But it won't be a surprise if one of those guys gets a request. And then Adam Peters at GM would be the other one to keep an eye on. And he turned down requests last year because it seems like he's maybe has a future GM job here in San Francisco, where he's from. He's a guy that's born and raised in Cupertino, just down the street from Santa Clara. So he might be content being in the South Bay, but he would be a name that would be talked about for GM role.
Well, something to keep our eye on, certainly in this week where the Niners are off. They'll be doing some watching of the playoffs, Matt. Enjoy the playoff weekend ahead, and we will talk to you again next week.
Okay, look forward to it.
All right, thank you. That's the great Matt Barrows joining us there from The Athletic. Check out all this stuff that he's constantly writing about the 49ers on The Athletic. All right, break time for us. As we go to break, want to tell you this is your chance